welcome. I'm David the Bruce. This is Frightfully Brilliant. And boy, we've got quite a few shows in the can. Quite a few shows in the can, yes. And we have a great one lined up for you this time. We have creepy riddles, and this may be the scariest doll in the world. I'm not going to tell you what it is before you see it, and the very first vampire story, and we're betting you haven't even heard of it. All right, well, before we get on with the show, introductions are needed. Morticia.
Hi.
And Gomez. And I'm going to let Morticia introduce the star of the show.
His name is Slappy.
Slappy with an S.
Now he's going to haunt everybody in their nightmares.
Yeah, but don't slap him. And then Charlie, but poor old Charlie, he seems to be deteriorating with every episode. He lost an arm.
That's the curse of Slappy.
Oh, that's the curse, huh? Woo. Well, I would say that that is Frightfully Brilliant, and away we go.
Why did the skeleton cross the road?
Because it's dead. It had nothing better to do.
Why did the zombie go into KFC?
Well, zombies eat people, so it went inside to eat all the people.
No, people go into KFC to eat chicken. So the zombie went into KFC to eat chicken. It's a chicken-eating zombie.
Why did the bat get locked up in Macy's overnight?
Because the bat is really a vampire, and it was clothes shopping. Macy's has nice clothes after all.
I know, but soon it's all going to be Amazon. Soon no one will be able to try their clothes on in person before they buy them. It's going to be quite tragic, even for vampires. What do you call it when a female pig kills herself?
A suicide.
That's right.
Why did the itsy-bitsy spider climb up the water spout?
Because if it didn't, someone would probably step on it, the poor dear. Why is it that we spin such morbid riddles?
Because they're frightfully brilliant.
And we'll be back. And we are back. And this time we have what might just be the scariest doll of them all. I'm a poet and don't know it. Take it away.
This wasn't even supposed to be a doll. That's why no one knows what it is. When you buy it, it calls it an action figure. But an action figure is more like Mr. Hyde here. Molded clothes, molded hair. So even if he kind of looks scary, he doesn't have that human quality of the real clothes and the real hair and the body that dolls have. But Solomon Kane, he had a movie out in, 2008, Gomez?
Yes.
He's a Puritan guy who goes around vanquishing evil in the late 1500s, early 1600s probably, and he was written by the author of Conan the Barbarian. The stories were out before there were cartoons or movies, and the author is Robert E. Howard. And he also wrote The Savage Tales of Solomon Kane. And Savage Tales indeed. This guy he would help you. He would probably put down his life for you. In fact, I'm sure he would. But he looks very grim. You know, the Puritans were very grim people. So he was definitely a Puritan. And if you think about it, imagine this guy with that scary, grim face and craggy features sitting amongst your Barbie dolls. When you buy him online, it calls it an action figure, but it's not true. Because he has real hair, and he has real clothes, and he's a doll. And I did not know this when I bought him because, again, they called him an action figure incorrectly. An action figure has molded clothes and molded hair. So, like our Mr. Hyde. So he is technically a doll, and no one ever mentions him as a scary doll because probably they don't know he's a doll. And so I'm bringing this to light. If you like scary dolls or you want to use one for your Halloween or whatever, you know, this guy is Slappy from Goosebumps. He's our roommate and dear friend, but he looks scary. His eyes glow in the dark. You know he's supposed to be scary. You know he's sinister. The same with Chucky. Chucky's got a big knife and a messed up face, and everybody knows about Chucky. But Solomon is unsung. He's got this little face. He's all grim and scary, and you know you would not want him creeping around your nightstand toward your face at night in the bedroom. I mean, like, and I just think that he's very cool because no one ever thinks about him as a scary doll, and to me he's scarier than Slappy or Chucky because he's got that Ken doll kind of make, and just his face looks scary. Like,
What is some more of the backstory on the doll? Actually, on Solomon Kane.
Well, he originally came up in 1928, where he was published in Weird Tales.
Weird Tales is a really cool magazine of kind of Tales from the Crypt type stories, and
yeah.
it's still out now.
Yeah.
Yes, and there were several reissues of the same stories, even though the definitive collection is the Savage Tales. But the original combined several adventure type of setting, historical settings, especially in the Richard Grenville Comes Back story, and also some fantastical, sort of like a nod to the Lovecraftian flair, because Robert E. Howard was part of the Lovecraftian circle.
H.P. Lovecraft, or as we've called him in previous
The
shows,
Big H.
Big H!
Really?
He wrote the
Yes.
Cthulhu Mythos, and then there's reflections of that in Solomon Kane because he has a staff, his power staff, that he was given by his African shaman friend, Nlonga, right?
Nilonga, yes.
And he was given the staff, and the staff is made of wood from another world. It's even older than our planet.
Well, wouldn't you know?
Wouldn't, you know? So it's pretty cool, and actually it reflects my dress. My dress has Bastet on it that we showed in the previous show. The top of the staff has a carving of a cat head of Bastet. And it's interesting because they said that the actual staff, the carving of Bastet, was put on it to cover up the original carving, that no one knows what it was, and I guess it's maybe they don't want them to know what it was. It's a mystery in the story. It's kind of interesting. But Solomon had some interesting powers, like he pummeled a ghost to death with his fists in one story, destroying an evil ghost. And that was interesting to me because a ghost is air, right? So if you just pummel it, you're just going right through it and you're not hurting it, you would think. But this guy had some interesting powers because apparently he could destroy ghosts, and his powers were supposed to come from, I guess, God, because he was trying to do good as a Puritan. But I don't know. I always wondered if something more sinister was giving him his powers because they were pretty interesting, pretty unheard of, and very supernatural. So he was a good guy, but he would kind of cross any line he could to do the good thing, which makes him a little more sinister. And some people even theorize a bit insane with his fanatical Puritanness.
Yeah, and there was a film that came out.
Yeah, that was 2008 that I mentioned earlier.
2008,
yes, and it was a pretty good film.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did it justice. I think the actor for that was more handsome than Solomon Kane as described in the stories or this doll. This doll is more true to the stories.
Yeah.
And he's got his little Puritan clothes on and his, but the hair is real and he just looks creepy. Like, you know, dolls are supposed to be usually prettier, and he's just a doll that's never mentioned as a pretty doll.
No, I didn't even, I was totally in the dark when it came to this character. Totally.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he's never mentioned in Scary Dolls, and he really should be because he's scary.
Yeah, he is. So when did you discover this?
When I bought it online, thinking it was an action figure because we write him in one of our roleplay games. He's with in that game. He's with Sarah Sanderson, the witch from Hocus Pocus, which they're a really weird couple. Long story, irrelevant to this video, but not video, TV show. I don't want to downplay our wonderful project. But Solomon Kane is definitely frightfully brilliant.
Yes, and we will be back. And we are back, and this time we're going to have a fiction review. And I think this is very interesting because I had never given this one lick of thought until our brilliant people here, frightfully brilliant people, enlightened this dark soul.
Apparently, there was a vampire story that was popular before Dracula. Usually,
Popular.
You
Yeah.
usually think of Dracula as the first major vampire work in the Victorian times, but there was actually one 20 years before it named Camilla. Gomez, why don't you share a bit about that?
Well, yes, Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, who was Bram Stoker's own editor, interestingly enough. Another frightful connection there. So
He was a what? Say that again?
I was thinking that, you know how we're talking about Titanic and all kinds of spooky
Yeah,
connections,
yeah.
so it's like that kind of mystical connection where two vampire stories, the originals, are connected to one another through pattern.
I think actually he was inspiring Bram Stoker.
Yes, it makes sense, of course.
Actually, Camilla inspired Lucy Westenra
Yes.
from, yeah.
But you know, that is true. Sometimes in time, there are certain stories that just sort of happen in different ways throughout the culture. Like, for example, The Walking Dead in our time. I mean, they're milking that thing to death, but, you know, it's just...
I don't want to get off topic by talking about why I hate that show. I know a lot of people love it. It's cool. Camilla is very interesting because it's a female antagonist and a female protagonist. And a lot of that kind of credit of the villain was given to men more in those stories.
Wow, that would be really remarkable for back then.
Yeah, and it even had some
Yeah,
kind
turn
of
of the century.
homoerotic kind of undertones that people speculate, but we don't know that that's true. Just the vampire, you know, kind of enthralling another female when she's a female just makes people wonder, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. Maybe she just wanted girlfriends to hang out with, like. But it had a Gothic setting, right, Gomez? The story was very picturesquely Gothic.
Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking that it had certain elements of the Gothic literature where there is an element of mystery, there is the mysterious haunting past that is expressed through some dark setting, dark castles and such, and all of those features are present as much in Carmilla as they were in something like Jane Eyre, for example. Also the hunting secrets that somebody who is relatively inexperienced is supposed to discover on their own, which applies as much to old-fashioned Victorian setting as it does to something like Dark Shadows, for example, that also pursues that Gothic
Yeah, I was
element.
thinking she was innocent like Vicky from Dark Shadows, which is a really cool late 60s vampire soap opera if you guys haven't seen it. Not the horrific movie from Johnny Depp, and it just wasn't good. But the old soap was good. It had vampire stuff in it too. A couple vampires eventually.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah, and I think the protagonist of Camilla was more innocent like Vicky, wouldn't you say?
Yes, that was my impression, that it was like an ingenue that we, the reader, are supposed to learn through her eyes, basically, what is happening, what is the dark, mysterious secret. And it is that mystery that is unveiled slowly and gradually in an interesting, fast-paced type of setting.
Yeah, it didn't drag on, and you eventually find out that this pretty young friend of hers, Camilla, is going to be a vampire who has lived for a long time, and they start to figure out how she was around a lot longer than she should have been and stuff like that. But it had some dangerous elements, and it shows how the girl was affected eventually by having her blood drained, and a lot of things from Dracula, but this was way first, and it doesn't get its glory enough, does it, darling?
No, and even...
Have they ever done anything with the story significantly? That is like...
He means like movie,
movies
action
or-
figure, action film.
There was actually a series that is based on Carmilla, and was
Really?
and a movie adaptation in a modern setting where two girls are.
Wasn't that called
I
The
saw
Moth or
that. I
something?
thought.
Yes.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, the Moth, it was good.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was based on Carmilla.
Okay, but it wasn't in the setting of the
It
Victorian
was more like
era.
a modern university.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
Did
kind
it
of
follow
cool.
the story pretty well?
Relatively, it lost some of its charm because it was trying to interpret it in modern terms.
And sometimes that's cool, and sometimes it doesn't make it as cool.
Yeah.
The thing is that the Victorian reader is less experienced than the modern one, and because of that, some of the innocence of the original innocence
Right.
is
Yeah,
lost.
that goes back to in our first show when we talked
Yeah.
about Frankenstein and how Boris Karloff looks so different than the original illustration in the book where
Yeah,
he's like a
yeah.
hot goth guy and he's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
smart. And I was
Yeah.
venting to my mom about that, and she goes, well, he's not scary. You know, the original beautiful creation of Victor Frankenstein is not a scary guy.
No.
But in Victorians, their sensibility was so delicate. They didn't have Freddy Krueger and all that nice pretty blood on the ceiling. So to them, an 8-foot-tall guy with yellow white skin and long black nails like mine and black hair would have been scary.
Would have been scary in itself.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
me, he's pretty. He's got like a delicate face. He's a slender build. He's pretty. But to them, it was different, and anything different would have been scarier because they had no Freddy Krueger to help them along, right?
Yeah, and I also think that the time that it was written, the Victorian era, was very suppressed.
Yeah,
were.
like in our Jekyll and Hyde episode. Any of you guys who are new, do check out our past episodes on our YouTube channel, Jekyll Hyde Club, or on Vimeo on David's Wonderful channel, where he has so much good stuff. I could watch it all day. I often do, which keeps me from getting stuff done. But it's okay. Any excuse works. I can blame David for not getting stuff done. So yeah, you could look up Frightfully Brilliant on Vimeo and be like me and not get stuff done watching David's channel with all his cool shows. I had to plug you because it keeps me from getting stuff done.
Ah, well.
It's a punishment plug.
I'll take it as a compliment.
It is, and it's frightfully brilliant.
All right, we'll be back. Now, I think it may have actually been in the first show. Yes, the first show that we did. We were talking about, what's it called? Community dreams? Shared dreams.
Shared dreams
Yeah, in which,
phenomena.
people have the same dream at the same time. Isn't that right? Is that how you describe it?
Sometimes.
But
It
we
can
got
be that
cut
way.
off time-wise. So, you know, we've been wanting to go back to it because this is such an interesting topic.
Yes, I had
And,
people say, Gomez got cut off at the end. I said, we'll go back, we'll go back.
You know, we only have the time that we have. So we have
Yes,
plenty
so
of
we
time
come back
now
if something
to
didn't get covered.
delve into shared dreams. Here, you want a dream? I can share it with you.
Now, Gomez actually interprets dreams on a bunch of sites. And I know they make books for interpreting your dreams, but that, I don't really go for those because each person's dreams are so personal. And to you, it could mean something different than to someone else. So you kind of need the whole context of the dream, not just a symbolism guide. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if you look in the books, they'll say, dreaming about dolls means this, and dreaming about not having your clothes on at work means this. And it's like, no,
no,
it
yeah.
can mean something different for
Yeah,
each person, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
need the context of the dream. And so Gomez goes on these sites where people tell their dreams, and he, you know, interprets it for them personally. So he's kind of a dream expert. Because, like, you know, if I dreamt about dolls, since I'm terrified of them, that would be totally different than if someone who loves dolls, like my friend Christy, dreamt about dolls. Like, she has a house full of dolls. Like, so, you know, she's great with them. It would be a different dream.
You know, when I was young, I used to have more dreams.
Did you have more dolls? Because I didn't. Okay, well.
I was young. Never mind. Go ahead.
You
You're
know
the
how to
dream
dream
expert.
more is you set your alarm and keep waking up. And then when you go back to sleep, your mind dreams more.
I would
I don't know
smash
why, but it does. Well, you
Quit
could
waking
drink.
me up.
You could drink a lot of tea and go pee a lot. You have to get up all night, and then you'll still have the same result where you have more dreams because you keep breaking your cycle.
Yeah. Okay. So. that was a-
Instead
that
of
was a
Jan,
pun on
you
Jung, by the
should
way,
have
but
you
go
should have mentioned Jung, Carl Jung.
ahead. Jung, yeah.
Yes,
I said it wrong, but I had to fit it into young.
yes, I figured. So previously we covered how dreams can be shared over time by different people. And by time, we mean something like as long as 5,000 years ago. A king would have a dream.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
5,000 years ago in Babylon. Those dreams, there are many recorded dreams. They're all written down on several Babylonian temples and those dedicated to the god Asclepius.
So
They put a lot more value on dreams, didn't
You're
they? back
saying
then?
that a
Yeah.
pimp in Babylon could have a dream now, or former Babylon, right? That a king in Babylon had 5,000 years ago.
Yes, pretty much. A pimp could have a very pretty...
He's not a king, so we're trying to just go opposite spectrum here. Like,
Yes, very appropriate. Especially appropriate since prostitutes held a very crucial importance in Babylon, and because of that were incorporated into the dream
I am
lore.
good.
Yeah,
yes.
I am good. I had no idea. So would this be geographically? Are they like in the same place when they repeat, or could a pimp in New York have the same dream as a Babylonian king?
Yes, one in New York could share the same one as a Babylonian
Okay, so
one.
it's not always about geography.
It is not always, and it can vary over time, but it preserves the crucial details that are the same. Somebody could dream about an earthquake, somebody would dream about a snake, and all of those dreams are recorded, and we know they're precisely as people are repeating them. And people don't study dreams, they just want them interpreted, so they are unaware of any previous dreams.
So they don't know that someone else had the dream.
Yeah, so they're not affected by previous knowledge or anything like that.
Now,
They're-
what would this mean, or if you have a dream that somebody else had, but you don't know that somebody else had that same dream.
Yeah.
We were
How
just
does all
missing
this
out
work?
on the coolness. You just didn't know. But Gomez knows because when he's reading the sites, he sees these people report their dreams, and he studied the ancient history of dreams. So he went, oh, I recognize this dream from this Babylonian king.
Got it.
And they don't even know they had the same dream until he tells them. So it's
So
kind of like...
where would a shared dream come from, and what does it mean, or does it mean anything at all? Or is it just a coincidence, or is there a phenomena behind this?
There's
or
always a
science?
phenomenon.
Well, I want to hear about it.
Well, I want to believe that dream can be divided into several levels, again, of consciousness. So on one level of consciousness, there are certain general patterns. There are the patterns we see in mythology, in fairy tales, in world history even. And they are the ones that show up most often in dreams. Those are the ones that the psychiatrist Carl Jung of the Swiss school described as basically the collective unconscious. So
Like the Akashic Records or something, where our minds all tap into the same...
Unconscious.
yes, and they use the general symbols, general dream symbols, and because of that, those books that Morticia mentioned, they're so popular, because they're the ones that play with the most general patterns that repeat themselves again and again.
So you can get it, but it's general rather than personal from the books. It might not mean the same thing to you. I had a dream once. It was a nightmare, actually. And I thought I understood what it meant at the time, but I was wrong because my roommate / soul sister Ophelia had the same dream 3 years later. And at the time, I realized what it meant. I didn't realize what it meant till she had it. But it was the exact same dream, and I hadn't really told her about mine. And it was exactly the same. We were both in the dream together in mine and hers. And so that was 3 years later. But other times, Gomez and I have had the same dream the same night at the same time. And it would be a really complex dream. Like, it wouldn't just be where if we were both dreaming about, like, talking to you, for example. Like, right now, we're talking to you. So that would be more like not as big of a deal, right?
No.
Like, obviously. But this was, like, weird. Like, the dream involved chess, and we both play, but it's been a while. And it involved the chess pieces being food, although his was turkey and mine was butterscotch candy. And it involved my chess piece. I knew I was making a wrong move that I should see, and I knew I should see this, and I knew that I was missing something, and it was frustrating me. And I was playing a partner from our chess club, and Gomez was doing the same thing. In his dream, he knew he was missing something that he should be seeing that was a danger. Same thing. It's not something that's common, see? So it was very odd that we had the same dream the same time with the same inflections, innuendos, all that.
Wow.
And didn't you say you read that on your dream site where other people would share it even the same night?
Yes, there was...
Dream site? You have a dream site?
I have several, and in several languages, since I know Russian and Hebrew as well. I interpret also dreams in those languages.
He's a man.
Really?
Yeah. So I joined different dream forums, basically, that are dedicated specifically...
Including Quora.
Including Quora, that are dedicated to dream interpretation. And so there was a case of this girl...
Do you have free time ever?
Never.
I have so many things to interpret. So, yes. So there was this girl that had the same dream as her own mother and grandmother. The dream was experienced in the same household. It was about the girl's ex, whom she has not seen for 2 years prior to the dream. And she did not think about the ex, neither of her relatives thought about the ex. The mother and the grandmother did not even see the ex in real life, only she did. But for some odd reason, one could say, they were all able to see the exact same dream where the mother and the grandmother even saw the physical description of the ex, which they were not supposed to know, really.
So they dreamt about him like she did, but they knew what he looked like when before that they didn't know what he looked like.
Correct.
So are they tapping into something?
Yeah, I wonder if their minds, you know, we only use 10% of our brain, and this fascinates me all the time. What if what if this girl was a very powerful sender telepathically, and they were just getting her dream out of her head, and that's how they knew this stuff?
Or how about that term you used a little earlier, the collective
Unconscious.
unconscious?
Yeah, but her boyfriend wasn't thousands of years old, so that's why Gomez was saying there's several levels of the
Yeah,
dream theory.
yeah,
It
no,
depends
that's
on
true,
each
true,
case.
true.
Was it collective unconscious? Was it her sending telepathically? I think sometimes it depends on the situation of which it is. I have dreams. I wrote a book about it that I'm looking for an agent for now. But I had this recurring nightmare about an old car, one of the first cars ever made that had the crank on the front. And
Like a Model T.
even before that, like a Model A. It had like it looked almost like when they called them in the beginning, they called those cars horseless carriages because it really looked more like a horse-drawn carriage. It just had a motor in it. And like,
Wow.
Yeah, it was scary. But in my dream, the car was doing all this stuff, and it was kind of like the driver was out of control, and the car was like slamming around, and he couldn't make it act right. And it terrified me in the dream, and I remember I reached out, I grabbed his arm, and that didn't really help the situation because it probably made it worse with him trying to control the wheel. And I reached out in front of me and grabbed the dashboard. It was like a wooden kind of slab. And I was holding on to it and freaking out. And later I saw one of those cars. I got to touch it. We talked earlier about blindness and horror villains, so this has a point. I have never seen one of those cars because I can't see. So I had no idea that it had a wooden dashboard or any of that.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I got that from a past life, maybe it was collective unconscious. The point is, I knew what that car looked like, and I had never read a description. I had never seen it because I can't see it.
So is that kind of hitting on what you've been saying?
Yes, in a sense, it pursues a common motif because car dreams are very common and very frequent in generalities. They just don't have that particular element of a specific old car. And
Sure.
So,
Mine was spatial.
yeah, and it features personal involvement in that dream that some dreams lack. Some of them just operate on the general level, and people don't remember enough details usually to go further than that.
I had that a lot, I remembered. Do
Yeah.
people ever dream that the car was driving itself, kind of like mine? I have a
Yes.
lot of those.
Yes, people dream about car driving itself.
What does that mean? Give them a sample of how you interpret. What does that mean?
Well, the most common interpretation for car is the course of your life. You use car as something you need to control, something to get to a destination.
Right.
So losing control over the car means that you're feeling out of control with your life.
Like if things aren't going the way you want, or
Elon Musk must have had such a dream. Things are out of control for him now, I must say.
Well, being on Twitter already makes him out of control, so so that's how
Car
it
that drives
operates.
itself. Oh, I really hate to say this, but I think we're almost within seconds of closing this episode.
sweet dreams, everyone.
No, wait, not yet, not yet, not yet. So how would you summarize the shared dream phenomena? How would you
Well, if
sum
they
it
go
up
to
in a
sleep
sentence
tonight,
or
they
two?
will never know if they had the same dream someone else did.
Shared dreams are general patterns that are greater than ourselves. They speak to all of us in our individual ways while preserving the greater aspect. And they have been there since the beginning of time and will probably be there until the end of time.
I like it.